This is very much spur of the moment. So I won't be offended if people aren't on here. I hope the sound is okay. I think it should be okay. So yeah, I'll just wait a little bit, and then I guess I just kind of want to share like what's going on in my mind. And one of the things that has prevented me from going live the past few weeks is like really assessing, how do I put this? Hey, hi Stress, hi. So yeah, like one of the things that I've been assessing the past few weeks is who I want to be in a lot of ways. And you know, as I've progressed in like the recent year, I guess, more and more I'm realizing like how much better it is, how do I put this, to not give advice, to like not try to like control people's lives, and to not think like I know better, or to think that it's my job to help people or save people. And of course, like YouTube is very much this platform where you're supposed to share everything you know, and I do know a lot of things, and so it makes sense that I would share it, but I just feel like maybe it's something that people will just come for it or meet me, or they won't, and it's just fine. That everyone's gonna figure it out themselves anyway, and I don't have to be a teacher. I don't have to be like the one passing on this knowledge. And that actually makes me feel a lot better as a person. Like, I think I would rather be that person than be the one with answers. Honestly, the more that I kind of settle into myself, I realize that it's a position one takes to see like the world is broken, or like the world needing fixing. And from that place, you're like trying to manage it and trying to solve for X, and you're not seeing that like the outside is just a reflection of what's going on with you. You're only like sensitive and seeing wrongness in whatever's there because of what's reflected inside. So for to like step back and not try to fix, the more I do that, the more things go right. It's not like that you don't take action. How do I put this? It's just like a very different place to be in when you're not fixing, but you're like doing something that feels right or feels good. I really do think that like feeling good, doing what feels good, and feels right in so many places like is the answer. And sometimes it's not like it's not a pleasure feeling. It's like, it's just this feeling of like being kind of in the right place at the right time, like it being done, it being solved, it just being like what I would want to do in this moment. If I forget about the future. So again, it's like not about pleasure. It's like if I forget about the future, and this is my life right now. This is my life. Who am I right now? Who do I want to be right now? So forget about the future too, because so often we think like we plan for future self. We put investments in for future self. And it's not that doesn't have good effect. It's just that instead of, keeping this future self off in the distance, like allow yourself to be that right now. And if you're in that place right now, what is it you do? What is it you feel? What state are you in today if you are that future self? And start acting from that place today. So it's like, I think a good example is fitness, and like I've gotten really into working out past few months, and I was talking to a friend about this, and he was like, oh, you know, I think it's had like a really good effect on you. I think you're in a better mood since you started working out. And there's a few things that have like contributed to my mood getting better, but you know, it's like chicken and the egg. Like, is my working out a place of my feeling better? Like, I remember when I started working out, literally it was like I wanted to get up. Like, literally I wanted to get up, and I wanted to start my day with energy and end my day with energy. So that's just how it started. It was like, and it was super, super light. So literally I started working out with like these, I think what it was like, I would sometimes just put on music and I would dance in my room. And then I was like, okay, well, like, there's a little bit of inconsistency there, but it made me feel good, right? It got like my body moving, and I would get into the music, and I would feel good for that time. And I was like, okay, well, how can I kind of like make it more structured? And so I just looked up like dance workouts, whatever. And I started like following Grow with Joe. If any of you like want to like lose weight or work out in a really, really easy way, I didn't want to change my body at all. I still don't know if I really want to change my body. But I just wanted to move, and I wanted to like, yeah, I just wanted that energy. So that's how I started. And then like, you know, it grows from there, and you start being more and more interested in it, and you start being more and more that person who is like in their body and feeling good, because that was your first intention. So the working out kind of comes from that. Like, you're gonna have ideas coming from it. So in answer to my friend's question, you know, like, and I know also a lot of people would probably, again, chicken and the egg, they'd be like, well, yeah, working out tends to make you feel better. But it's the person who decides to work out. It's like, what starts that? What sparks that idea? And what makes you stick to it? Like, that's what I'm interested in. That's what I care about. And so, oh my goodness, I just feel like I'm rambling so much. But so, you know, in terms of this channel and going forward and doing lives or doing videos or whatever it is I decide to do, yeah, I guess I'm just like a little bit, how do I put this? I feel like there is an option that I cannot see yet, because the way that I think of YouTube and the way that I think maybe of myself in terms of having value and what it is I can share and what it is I can do and what it is, yeah, like that can be, like beneficial isn't even the right word. Just that like is worth putting out there on the internet and connecting with people over. I feel like I don't have a model that does exist, but I'm just not in that state to see it. Do you know what I mean? And so right now I'm kind of stuck feeling like, okay, do I go on and do I do what I've always done? Do I not go on? Like, I don't know my plan C yet. I don't see door 3. Where's my third door that I've been blind to, you know? If I don't want to give advice anymore. Because really, the world has enough advice. The world has enough wisdom. Yeah. If I've learned anything from my mother, it's to stop giving advice. And the more, by the way, like, you stop giving advice, the more people come to you for it. What the hell? What the hell? At least that's what I've experienced lately. It's like the less I care what people do in their life, and the more I'm just like, you're great. The more they're like, so what do you think? And then what I think is usually like, what do you think? That's my advice lately, is I'm like, well, what do you want to do? And people tend to know what they want to do. I think like my mom asked me recently something, and I was like, okay, well, she had like all these like different options, and I was like, okay, well, here we go, option one. And I like had her kind of like imagine it and visualize it and live in it. And I was like, all right, and have it be that it's like the best case scenario for this. Do that. Now, are you there? Are you experiencing it? Great. And then I moved on to option like 2 and option 3 and option 4. And then I was like, okay, which felt the best? Like what experience do you want to live the most? And then from there she knew, and then she like went off and something even better like ended up manifesting for her. I was like, there you go. So I didn't do anything. Like literally, I didn't give advice. And I think that's like, it's not like that's your job, but I think if we contribute to one another, the way that we actually contribute to one another is just like living. And then our lives and our personalities and just like the things that come out of our mouth are the lessons for other people if they're so inclined to hear it. You know, you inspire people you inspire people by who you are. You don't inspire people by like you trying to tell others what to do or what you think is the right thing. So that's where I'm at. I'm like, how do I like share myself without, yeah, what is that? What even is that channel? And I know it's like, maybe it's a vlog, and maybe you guys have ideas. The other thing too that I'll just be honest about, and I love you guys all so much, by the way. I just like really hope you know that. I really, really do appreciate all of you who have supported me and loved on me and listened and watched and contributed to the conversation. I'm so grateful. Sometimes I've gotten frustrated, feeling limited by Faith Seed, like that's what this channel is. And I know that's how most of you found me. It's kind of surprising that that's what most of you found me for. I don't know. But so, yeah, that sometimes has been, maybe it's an excuse, but it's like, I feel like it's a limitation as to what I can do because what pulls people's interest is just like a video game character. So I don't get to really start at a blank slate. Like I've even thought of like having some kind of like anonymous channel, because then at least I wouldn't get like, oh my god, is it Faith Seed or things like that. And then it would literally be like starting at the bottom, and I would just be known for whatever that channel is. So that's something too. But I mean, maybe you guys have ideas of what you would like to see, or what it is that I could do, or maybe I should just take a break for a while and develop myself, meaning like I'm just really continuing to grow as a person, and sometimes I go back and forth about whether I should be like sharing myself in that kind of vulnerable, unsteady place where I'm still trying to figure out who I am and what I want to be. Whether it's okay to be like sharing that, or whether it's potentially like not triggering, but I'm making it more difficult for myself by sharing from that place, because I might just fall back to old patterns by doing what I've always done. And there is like a bit of a wanting to prove oneself, wanting to prove that you're the authority on life or whatever when you're talking to a camera, talking to strangers, that you are an authority, that you are someone who should be listened to or watched or all of that. And I know that no one is that authority. I know that, but there's like this element to it that sometimes people fall pressure to. I think sometimes it can be beneficial. You know, if you're supposed to have the answers, then sometimes you come up with the answers. But I don't want to just continue to be who I've always been because that's what I think I'm supposed to do on this platform or for others. And it's just the easiest way of being because it's the most familiar. So those are all my thoughts. Oh my God. Thank you so much for just being an open vessel for me to spew everything into. You really like my hair today, Honest? What? You guys are so weird. It's literally like, thank you. Thank you. My hairdresser wants to cut it, and I will not let her. No, I will let her. Like, trim it. I'm the most boring hair client in the world. Just a trim. I need to go out more. Wait, okay, let me see what the hell you guys are. Okay, I don't know. I'm not gonna go back. Hi, Stress. Let me read your comment. It's okay to grow. It's okay to change. It's okay to switch your content, especially if you have underwent a big personal change. Yeah. Don't let your previous content be an imaginary chain on your hands. Yeah, and it's not so much like content. It's really like a way of thinking of content and like a way of being, I think. That's what I'm concerned about is like my way of being before that I just don't want to be like triggered and back into being is like fixer, like one with answers, one with like and really like obsessed kind of with like self-help and self-growth and being like the wise one and being the smart one and yeah, it's not that I think I'll stop being that, but I kind of feel like that's for me. And hopefully that just is something that I embody as opposed to being something I need to talk about. You know what I mean? Like that can just be the foundation and there's something else on top of that, you know? There's other things in life that I'm just excited about and that I'm doing and that I'm like living a life, not just perfecting how to live life. Does that make sense? I think that's actually a really good way of putting it. Okay. And then, since you guys are just talking video games, I'm gonna see that's the other thing too. Like you guys are all into video games, and it's fine, but I'm not. Like I cannot relate to you on that aspect, and so I'm not the girl to talk about video games. I'm just not. I'm not your girl. There's other girls for that. You need to protect your energy too. Oftentimes in self-help spaces, people tend to blame when things don't go well, but oftentimes it's their own thoughts, behaviors that led. Yeah, absolutely. People are really vulnerable in self-help spaces. And it's not that like they're taken advantage of, but it's like who they are is someone who gets taken advantage of. I don't know where you're supposed to go if you're like in need of that, but the Shrink Next Door really made me think about that in terms of like manifesting your own life. For those of you who don't know, it's like based on a true guy, and basically his shrink like totally took over his life. And then at the end of it, like he finally comes to, and it's like 30 years later, and he's like, oh my God, what would have happened if this shrink didn't come into my life. Like, I would have had all this time with my family. I would have maybe had a wife, had a girlfriend, and I completely let this one man overpower everything. And so you can easily look at like the shrink as this narcissist who totally took advantage, but it's also on the person. So it's like you find what you are, you know, not necessarily what you need. And so if you're like being in need of help or in need of someone else to tell you how to live your life, you're gonna find that. You're gonna find things that align to you, like being broken or being in need. You're gonna find things, and you're gonna find people that agree with you. So it's weird, but it's like, it's almost like if you think you need therapy, the best therapist to find is like the one who's like, you don't need therapy. I know that sounds really weird, but I honestly think that. I think that if you need therapy, what you actually need is you need someone to be like, no, you're perfectly sane. And you need to go to your sessions regularly and tell them like how crazy you are, and for them to be like, why are you here again? That's actually what you need. Yeah, another thing that I thought of was like, I don't know. I do have some ideas for creativity that I could just like share and like start a community around, but some of them is writing. Some of them is like poetry, which I've done in the past. Just creating like short videos of like poetry and getting into like a rhythm of painting, vlogging. I don't know. And it's also, and I also don't have to do anything if I don't want to. Hey Lenny, by the way. I don't know if I've seen you here before. You hate video games? Okay, maybe I'm making assumptions about you guys, by the way. By the way. I'm sorry. I'm truly, deeply sorry if I have done so. I titled this video Expectations. Sure, I'll talk about it. Because I literally was like, do I go live? What are we gonna, what is this live gonna be? But literally just before, I was talking to my dad about how we should compose again. And he kind of looked at me and it was like, composing is a lot of work. Composing is a lot of work. And it is, I know that kind of thought process of like, do I really want to get into that? But I think so often like we have expectations of things based on past experience, like solely either based on past experience or based on other people's experience, or, you know, just like prejudiced ideas that we have. And the truth is we don't know what any endeavor is like really gonna be. We don't. We're just projecting ourselves into the future, you know what I mean, from that place. And so you have options. I'm just saying, you have options. So either you can be like, if I have the smallest inkling, I don't have to jump into it, but I could explore something. I could start really small. I could start really small with the feeling I want to have about this thing. Like, if I'm thinking about like writing poetry, there's a feeling of writing poetry. There's a feeling of like, just a kind of curiosity that maybe I would want to explore, and then like maybe share it. And it would be like small. So start small, you know? And forget like what it's gonna be. Stick with the feeling of like why you even want to do that in the first place. Don't think about the work, or don't think about like the reception, or don't think about what it's gonna take, or what you want it to grow into. Just think about, like, why do you want that in the first place? Who is that person that you imagine who does that? And is that who you want to be? You know? Is that how you see yourself? Is that, like, the best version of yourself doing that? And is, like, we all kind of have these archetype ideas of, like, a person who works out, a person who, and we can break those down, you know? But if you have heavy resistance to being the kind of person who works out, it's going to be hard for you to just, like, go to a gym, you know? So find instead, like, something that just feels, like, fun. Like, I kind of like that. I kind of like that. And then try to embody, if, like, you really like that and you really want that, then just try to embody that a little bit every day. So it doesn't have to be a piece, but if, like, my dad wanted to compose again, and maybe he doesn't, this is just me giving advice to him, but don't worry so much about he shouldn't worry so much about, like, oh, all the work that it's going to take, because he's a completely different person than the last time he composed. But if there's something about being a composer and the feeling of composing that he misses or that he likes, just be a bit of a composer every day, you know? And it will grow. It will grow. That's what I would say about expectations. That's why I named it that, so there you go. And I guess, yeah, we all get stopped so easily by just ideas of what we think it will be. And all the steps that we think we need to take in order to get there. All the things that are required of us. And it's not that things aren't required of you, but it's like, jump to the end. I just think, yeah, we get so almost paralyzed by all the steps, all the things, all the road. Just go to the end. Just go to the end of what you want. And if the end actually isn't attractive, you know, it's like, and I think that's also maybe, like, a good way of, I'm just talking at the top of my head. Is that an expression? I'm talking at the top of my head. That's an expression now. If you're like, I think I should go to business school, and you go to the end of having a business degree and you're, like, completely turned off and working, I don't know, what do you do after having a business degree? If you go to the end of that and you're like, that sounds horrible, but I still feel like I should go to business school. The end of that doesn't interest you. If the end is, like, being at business school and that honestly makes you happy, okay. But if the end for you is just like, oh, I just kind of like the idea of having, like, a book of poems. I just like that. I just like the idea of having a book of poems. Then just live in that end every day. Be that person who has that book of poems every day. Whatever it is for you. Be that person today. Like, don't put it off for yourself. There's, like, something that I've been kind of, like, wrestling around, like, the marshmallow test. You know, it was like a bunch of scientists, whatever, behavioral scientists got together and they all decided, oh, what are the characteristics that make a successful person? And they said, delayed gratification. Okay. And the marshmallow test, for those of you who don't know, is like they put a bunch of kids into a room and they said, okay, here's some marshmallows. Now, if you want to eat the marshmallow right now, you can do so. But if you wait 15 minutes, you can have 2 marshmallows. And so some kids could wait and some kids couldn't. And then these scientists decided, okay, so this is delayed gratification. And if you take the same theory and you put it to, like, an adult or just a human and their life, it's the people who are able to delay their gratification that then they end up with more marshmallows in life, you know? But I just think another way of thinking about it is, like, those kids thought about the 2 marshmallows. This makes sense to me. And they thought, I'm the kind of person who has 2 marshmallows. I don't have 1 marshmallow. I have 2. And then they were led to wait by holding that in their head. You know what I'm saying? So it's like they were already the person with 2 marshmallows. So it's just another way of looking at it, of like what leads to what. You know what I'm saying? I don't think those kids were like living in the state of like having to delay their gratification. I think that's what smart scientists label it as. But I think those kids decided what they wanted and what they already had. And then they lived in that place for the 15 minutes and then they got their wish. Honestly, though. Okay. They got their wish of 2 marshmallows. And by the way, I just want to say that, like, I've kind of been living in that. Like, who am I? Who am I? Like, and I get to say. Nothing outside of me gets to say. And I just have to say that when you have that, it's like the biggest coat of armor you can ever have. And I didn't realize this. Like, if you just go off of what everything else you think tells you about yourself, you're just drifting in the wind. And you're so fragile and vulnerable. But if you know who you are, even if nothing else indicates that right now, and you're just like, no, but it's this, you're so safe, you're so protected, you're so secure. You're so secure. And I think this is what people mean when they say, like, when you know who you are, like, nothing can affect you. I think it's that. It's just that what never made sense to me before was that, like, you decide who you are. Meaning it's not something you discover. You only discover it insofar as you discover what really, like, speaks to you as for who you are. You know what I mean? I want to be that. That's me. That's me. And anything else that says anything against that, I don't care, because I know who I am, because I decided. Oh, wow, stressed. You've been publishing a book? Oh, that's so beautiful. What's your book about? So is it your book and you're self-publishing, or is this someone else's work? Y equals mx plus b? This is how my brain works, okay? It makes sense. It's just, you gotta follow the very abstract dotted lines. Oh my goodness, I forgot. We can read some. I've been very into Outlander lately. I won't lie. That's what started me. You guys started me on this whole journey. After that whole joke, I started reading Outlander. And I'm very into it. Very into it. And I've been working on my Scottish accent. You know, as one does. Hey, Chris. You're self-publishing. It's a pretty interesting storyline that's super hard to explain. But to put it briefly, police station. Okay, police station. Is it about police? Or is it someone in a police station? I mean, that's really, really cool. Please tell me about it when it's published, because I would love to read it. Okay, guys. I'm going to read page 2 of It's in This Kiss. I love this. Look at this. I love a map. I feel like I talked about this last time. I love a map, or I love a family tree. Did I actually read something last time? Or did I just read Did I actually read anything? I don't remember. Did I just read like the synopsis? Did I read the prologue? 1815, 10 years before our story begins in earnest. This doesn't ring a bell. I did? Wow. But I feel like I have to go back. I'm gonna go back. I don't think I read this. Okay, so you guys know the Bridgerton family tree, correct? I don't know that it matters for the prologue. But Hyacinth is the youngest of the Bridgerton clan. I want to say that Hyacinth was born after Edmund's death. Yeah, which you see in season 2. Okay, prologue. I remember pointing out the little hyacinths. Little like aside, Jamie is allergic to hyacinths from Outlander prologue. Should I do an accent? "1815, 10 years before our story begins in earnest. There were 4 principles governing Gareth St. Clair's relationship with his father that he relied upon to maintain his good humor and general sanity. 1, they did not converse unless absolutely necessary. 2, all absolutely necessary conversations were to be kept as brief as possible. 3, in the event that more than the simplest of salutations was to be spoken, it was always best to have a third party present. And finally, 4, for the purpose of achieving points 1, 2, and 3, Gareth was to conduct himself in a manner so as to garner as many invitations as possible to spend school holidays with friends. In other words, not at home. In more precise words, away from his father." Yes, we got that. All in all, Gareth thought, when he bothered to think about it, which wasn't often now that he had his avoidance tactics down to a science, these principles served him well. And they served his father just as well, since Richard St. Clair liked his younger son about as much as his younger son liked him, which was why, Gareth thought with a frown, he'd been so surprised to be summoned home from school. And with such force. His father's missive had held little ambiguity. Gareth was to report to Clare Hall immediately. Are we interested? Are we intrigued? Gareth St. Clair. His father, yeah, it was dashed irritating this. With only 2 months left at Eton, his life was in full swing at school, a heady mix of games and studies, and of course the occasional surreptitious foray to the local public house, always late at night and always involving wine and women. Gareth's life was exactly as a young man of 18 years would wish it, and he'd been under the assumption that, as long as he managed to remain out of his father's line of sight, his life at 19 would be similarly blessed. He was to attend Cambridge in the fall, along with all of his closest friends, where he had every intention of pursuing his studies and social life with equal fervor. As he glanced around the foyer of Clare Hall, he let out a long sigh that was meant to sound impatient, but came out more nervous than anything else. What on earth could the Baron, as he had taken to calling his father, want with him? His father had long since announced that he had washed his hands of his younger son and that he was only paying for his education because it was expected of him, which everyone knew really meant it would look bad to their friends and neighbors if Gareth wasn't sent to a proper school. Okay. There you go. 2 pages for you guys. I can keep reading if you wish. Gareth? It's a good name. I'm going to keep reading for a bit. When Gareth and his father did cross paths, the Baron usually spent the entire time going on about what a disappointment the boy was, which only made Gareth wish to upset his father even more. Nothing like living down to expectations, after all. Synchronicity. Gareth tapped his foot, feeling rather like a stranger in his own home, as he waited for the butler to alert his father as to his arrival. He'd spent so little time here in the last 9 years, it was difficult to feel much in the way of attachment. To him, it was nothing but a pile of stones that belonged to his father and would eventually go to his elder brother George. Nothing of the house and nothing of the St. Clair fortunes would come to Gareth, and he knew that his lot was to make his own way in the world. He supposed he would enter the military after Cambridge. The only other acceptable avenue of vocation was the clergy, and heaven knew he wasn't suited for that. Gareth had few memories of his mother, who had died in an accident when he was 5, but even he could recall her tousling his hair and laughing about how he was never serious. "My little imp you are," she used to say, followed by a whisper, "Don't lose that. Whatever you do, don't lose it." He hadn't, and he rather doubted. My British. I feel like doing British. And he rather doubted the Church of England would wish to welcome him into their ranks. "Master Gareth." Gareth looked up at the sound of the butler's voice. As always, Guilfoyle spoke in flat sentences, never queries. "Your father will see you now," Guilfoyle intoned. "He is in his study." Gareth nodded at the aging butler and made his way down the hall toward his father's study. Always his least favorite room in the house. It was where his father delivered his lectures, where his father told him he would never amount to anything, where his father icily speculated that he should never have had a second son, that Gareth was nothing but a drain on the family finances and a stain on their honor. He sounds like good what a great dad. No, Gareth thought as he knocked on the door. No happy memories here. "Enter." Gareth pushed open the heavy oak door and stepped inside. His father was seated behind his desk, scribbling something on a sheet of paper. He looked well, Gareth thought idly. His father always looked well. It would have been easier had he turned into a ruddy caricature of a man, but no. Lord St. Clair was fit and strong and gave the appearance of a man 2 decades younger than his 50-odd years. He looked like the sort of man a boy like Gareth ought to respect, and it made the pain of rejection all the more cruel. Gareth waited patiently for his father to look up. When he didn't, he cleared his throat. No response. Gareth coughed. Nothing. Gareth felt his teeth grinding. This was his father's routine, ignoring him for just long enough to act as a reminder that he found himself beneath notice. Gareth considered saying, "Sir." He considered saying, "My lord." He even considered uttering the word, "Father." But in the end, he just slouched against the door jamb and started to whistle. His father looked up immediately. "Cease," he snapped. "Cease." I'm going to use that. Cease. It's good. Gareth quirked a brow and silenced himself. "Stand up straight. Good God," the Baron said testily. "How many times have I told you that whistling is ill-bred?" Gareth waited a second, then asked, "Am I meant to answer that? Or was it a rhetorical question?" His father's skin reddened. Gareth swallowed. He shouldn't have said that. He'd known that his deliberately jocular tone would infuriate the Baron, but sometimes it was so damned hard to keep his mouth shut. He'd spent years trying to win his father's favor, and he'd finally given in and given up. If he took some satisfaction in making the old man as miserable as the old man made him, well, so be it. One had to take one's pleasures where one could. "I'm surprised you're here," his father said. Gareth blinked in confusion. "You asked me to come," he said, and the miserable truth was, he'd never defied his father. Not really. He poked, he prodded, he added a touch of insolence to every statement and action, but he had never behaved with out-and-out defiance. Miserable coward that he was. In his dreams, he fought back. In his dreams, he told his father exactly what he thought of him, but in reality, his defiance was limited to whistles and sullen looks. "So I did," his father said, leaning back slightly in his chair. "Nonetheless, I never issue an order with the expectation that you will follow it correctly. You so rarely do." Gareth said nothing. His father stood and walked to a nearby table, where he kept a decanter of brandy. A long prologue, guys. It's always brandy. They always have to have a drink. It's very taxing having a conversation. One must drink during it. I imagine you're wondering what all this is about, he said. Gareth nodded, but his father didn't bother to look at him, so he added, yes, sir. Baron took an appreciative sip of his brandy, leaving Gareth waiting while he visibly savored the amber liquid. Finally, he turned and with a coolly assessing stare said, I finally discovered a way for you to be useful to the St. Clair family. Gareth's head jerked in surprise. You have? Sir? His father took another drink, then set his glass down. Indeed. He turned to his son and looked at him directly for the first time during the interview. You'll be getting married. Of course he's getting married. It's called this. And that's the only way that a person is useful in this world. Sir, Gareth said, nearly gagging on the word. This summer, Lord St. Clair confirmed. Gareth grabbed the book of a chair to keep from swerving. He was 18, for God's sake. Far too young to marry. What about Cambridge? Could he even attend as a married man? Where would he put his wife? And good God above, whom was he supposed to marry? It's an excellent match, the Baron continued. The dowry will restore our finances. Restore our finances, yes. Our finances, sir, Gareth whispered. Lord St. Clair's eyes clamped down on his son's. We're mortgaged to the hilt, he said sharply. Another year, and we will lose everything that isn't entailed. But how? Eton doesn't come cheap, the Baron snapped. No, but surely it wasn't enough to beggar the family, Gareth thought desperately. This couldn't be all his fault. Disappointment you may be, his father said, but I have not shirked my responsibilities to you. You have been educated as a gentleman. You've been given a horse, clothing, and a roof over your head. Now it is time you behaved like a man. Who? Gareth whispered. Eh? Who? He said a little louder. Whom was he meant to marry? Who? Marry Winthrop, his father said in a matter-of-fact voice. Gareth felt the blood leave his body. Marry Rotham's daughter, his father added. Rotham? Rotham's daughter, his father added, as if Gareth didn't know that. But Mary will be an excellent wife, the Baron continued, biddable, and you can dump her in the country should you wish to gad about town with your foolish friends. But Father, Mary, I accepted on your behalf, his father stated. It's done. The agreements have been signed. Gareth fought for air. This couldn't be happening. Surely a man could not be forced into marriage. Not in this day and age. Rotham would like to see it done in July, his father added. I told him we have no objections. But Mary, Gareth gasped. I can't marry Mary. One of his father's bushy brows inched toward his hairline. You can, and you will. But Father, she's simple. The Baron finished for him. He chuckled. Will it make a difference when she's under you in bed, and you don't have to do anything to her, and you don't have anything to do with her? Otherwise, he walked toward his son until they were uncomfortably close. All you need to do is show up at the church. Do you understand? Get me a stop. So we got it. There we go. Oh wait, no. It's about to get good. Gareth said nothing. He didn't do much of anything either. It was all he could manage just to breathe. He'd known Mary Winthrop his entire life. She was a year his elder, and their family's estates had bordered on one another's for over a century. They'd been playmates as young children, but it soon became apparent that Mary wasn't quite right in the head. Gareth had remained her champion whenever he was in the district. He bloodied more than one bully who had thought to call her names or take advantage of her sweet and unassuming nature. But he couldn't marry her. She was like a child. It had to be a sin. And even if it wasn't, he could never stomach it. How could she possibly understand what was meant to transpire between them as man and wife? He could never bed her. Never. Gareth just stared at his father, words failing him. For the first time in his life, he had no easy reply, no flip retort. There were no words, simply no words for such a moment. I see we understand each other, the Baron said, smiling at his son's silence. No! Gareth burst out. This is why I wanted to keep reading. For that, no! Gareth burst out, the single syllable ripping itself from his throat. No, I can't. His father's eyes narrowed. You'll be there if I have to tie you up. No! He felt like he was choking. But somehow he got the words out. Father, Mary is, well, she's a child. She'll never be more than a child. Do you know that? I can't marry her. It would be a sin. The Baron chuckled, breaking the tension as he turned swiftly away. Are you trying to convince me that you, of all people, have suddenly found religion? No, but there is nothing to discuss, his father cut in. Rotham has been extremely generous with the dowry. God knows he has to be, trying to unload an idiot. Don't speak of her that way, Gareth whispered. I might not want to marry Winthrop, but he'd known her all his life, and she did not deserve such talk. It is the best you will ever do, Lord St. Clair said. The best you will ever have. Rotham's settlement is extraordinarily generous, and I will arrange for an allowance that will keep you comfortable for life. An allowance, Gareth echoed dully. His father let out one short chuckle. Don't think I would trust you with a lump sum, he said. You? Gareth swallowed uncomfortably. What about school? He whispered. There's a lot of whispering that Gareth is doing. I don't think Gareth has a lot of confidence in himself. You can still attend, his father said. In fact, you have your new bride to thank you for that. Wouldn't have had the blunt to send you without the marriage settlement. Gareth stood there, trying to force his breathing into something that felt remotely even and normal. His father knew how much it meant to him to attend Cambridge. It was the one thing upon which the two of them agreed. A gentleman needed a gentleman's education. It didn't matter that Gareth craved the entire experience, both social and academic, whereas Lord St. Clair saw it merely as something a man had to do to keep up appearances. It had been decided upon for years. Gareth would attend and receive his degree. Now it seemed that Lord St. Clair had known that he could not pay for his younger son's education. When had he planned to tell him, as Gareth was packing his bags? It's done, Gareth, his father said sharply, and it has to be you. George is the heir, and I can't have him sullying the bloodlines. Besides, he added with pursed lips, I wouldn't subject him to this anyway. But you would me, Gareth whispered. Again with the whispering. I'm sorry, I'm delivering his lines wrong. Was this how much his father hated him? How little he thought of him? He looked up at his father, at the face that had brought him so much unhappiness. There had never been a smile, never an encouraging word, never a... Why? Gareth heard himself saying, the words sounding like a wounded animal, pathetic and plaintive. Why? He said again. His father said nothing, just stood there, gripping the edge of his desk under his until his knuckles grew white. And Gareth could do nothing but stare, somehow transfixed by the ordinary sight of his father's hands. I'm your son, he whispered. Again. Can't let me do a Gareth whisper. Why haven't... I'm your son, he whispered, still unable to move his gaze from his father. I'm your son. Your son. How could you do this to your own son? And then his father, who was the master of the cutting retort, whose anger always came dressed in ice rather than fire, exploded. His hands flew from the table, and his voice roared through the room like a demon. By God, how could you not have figured it out by now? You are not my son. You have never been my son. You are nothing but a bye-blow, some mangy whelp your mother got off another man while I was away. Rage poured forth like some hot, desperate thing too long held captive and repressed. It hit Gareth like a wave, swirling around him, squeezing and choking until he could barely breathe. No, he said, desperately shaking his head. It was nothing he hadn't considered, nothing he hadn't even hoped for. But it couldn't be true. He looked like his father. They had the same nose, didn't they? And I have fed you, the Baron said, his voice low and hard. I have clothed you and presented you to the world as my son. I have supported you when another man would have tossed you into the street, and it is well past the time that you return the favor. No, Gareth said again, it can't be. I look like you. For a moment, Lord St. Clair remained silent. Then he said bitterly, an unhappy coincidence, I assure you. But I could have turned you out at birth. Lord St. Clair cut in, sent your mother packing, tossed you both into the street, but I did not. He closed the distance between them and put his face very close to Gareth's. Why? Why was he like, You have been acknowledged and you are legitimate. And then in a voice furious and low, you owe me. No, Gareth said, his voice finally finding the conviction he was going to need to last him through the rest of his days. No, I won't do it. I will cut you off. The Baron warned. You won't see another penny from me. You can forget your dreams of Cambridge. You'll... No, Gareth said again, and he sounded different. He felt changed. This was the end, he realized. The end of his childhood, the end of his innocence, and the beginning of... God only knew what it was the beginning of. I'm through with you. His father, no, not his father, hissed. Through. So be it, Gareth said. And he walked away. There you go. That's the prologue. So, I know you guys all want to know what happens to Gareth. Classic story. The end. That's the end. And Gareth was a self-made man. Eventually, he and his father reconcile. You know, and it turns out his dad's a really good guy. He just was under a lot of pressure because of the financial problems, you know. And also, yeah, he hadn't had supper yet, so he was just a little hangry, as most of us are, generally. And they made up, and it was great. But Gareth, you know, went on to become a, what did he become? He became, what do you think? A scholar of Sufi poetry. I don't know. He became an archaeologist. That's what he became. He became a historian. He became a bartender. That's true. That's right, Julia Quinn. It's not bad, guys. Like, I'm kind of into trash novels, I think. Like, you know those book stands with all the, like, trash novels? I'm kind of always curious about those because they're like that's the thing you should not be caught dead reading. I'm always like, yeah, but kind of makes me want to read it. All the, like, bad science fiction books, you know? I just want to pour through those. I remember, like, in a book club, we were reading Red, White, and Royal Blue, okay? And I was happy with it. I thought it was great. It was great. It's like about how the Prince of England, it's like this fictitious Prince of England is gay secretly and falls for the president's son. So whatever, it's very silly. But I remember someone in the book club was like, I have to move it from my bookshelf during Zoom calls so that people don't ask questions about how can I be really reading that. And I was like, who cares what you're reading? Read what you want. Oh, thanks. That was actually a decent read. Okay, I'm glad. You guys are so cute. All right, I'm gonna go. Thanks for, I don't know if you're just entertaining me, but thanks for letting me read to you. It's very fun. And, yeah. I don't know why we don't read to each other anymore. It's such a sweet endeavor to read to someone. Isn't it? Why do we outgrow that? I don't think we do, obviously. So I can keep reading if you want. Maybe that's what my channel becomes. But yeah, if there's anything that, I don't know, you know, drop me a line if there's, or like leave me a comment. If there's something that you think maybe the channel can evolve into. But yeah, I love you so much. And thank you for being here, as always. Your break's just ending. I'm so glad you got to be here, Fatal. Read a phone book? You're sweet. Do those exist still? Am I doing a weekday stream? So, like, again, I've been thinking about that. I'm not opposed to it. I'm not opposed to making the time. I just like don't know. I don't know what to do on it. So possibly. Possibly. And that dinosaur is forever Brian. Okay.